Hello and welcome to the Completionist Files, where I 100% games and give my totally professional opinion on them. Today we're diving into Dredge, the cosmic horror fishing sim that you didn't know you needed until now. Note that we're actually only talking about the base game of Dredge. There are DLCs, and I do briefly mention what they are and kind of what they expand upon, but I have not played them. I have only completed the base game to 100%. So, going over our stats, the entire playtime for this series was about 17 hours. I have all the achievements, 40 out of 40. The difficulty behind it was probably about a 1 out of 5. The level of annoyance it brought was probably about a 4 out of 5. And the overall experience, I'd say, was very good. Alright, so let's answer the question of what is Dredge? Dredge is a game where you play as an unnamed fisherman that has crashed along the shoreline of the small bay town of Greater Marrow. Almost immediately, the game begins to hint that something isn't right with the region you have found yourself in, warning to return before night falls and the fog begins to roll in. Dredge is a blend between a fishing simulator and a cosmic horror exploration game where the player spends their time fishing or dredging the depths with their crane to reel up fish, monstrosities, or sunken treasures. Beyond the fishing is the avoidance of cosmic entities within the deep. There's also another large piece of Dredge. It is the puzzle/inventory management Tetris style mechanic that we do dive into and explain a little bit later. The game itself was made by Black Salt Games and published on Steam by Team 17 on March 30th of 2023. The game itself is priced at $32.5 Canadian for the base game, with the complete edition, which includes all 3 of the DLCs, being priced at $50 Canadian. Both recent and overall reviews for the games are at a staggering 95 positive review rating. Overall, Dredge is a deceptively cozy, cottagecore-esque game until the moment it decides that it is no longer this. The tension of being chased by horrors beyond comprehension builds a truly unforgettable atmosphere. Alright, so let's get into actually playing the game. Like I said previously, the game is deceptively peaceful. I've spent hours just fishing and relaxing, all the while my guard was slowly being let down, only to have a giant sea serpent or glowing stingray assault my boat moments later. There are actually 3.5 types of fishing games to play. I say 3.5 because realistically, one of them is a circle. Well, 2 of them are a circle, but the one circle is fragmented. The other ones do have different styles of how you catch the fish. The games themselves are in no way actually difficult. The only time I've really ever found myself messing up was when I wasn't really paying attention and it kind of just threw my timing off, which just continued to throw my timing off until I actually paid attention and got my timing back on track. Outside of the fishing game, there is dredging, which is usually used for extracting raw materials or treasures from the depths. It's its own separate minigame where instead of actually having to align yourself with the green bars on the fishing meter, you actually have to avoid holes in the fishing meter by using the F key on keyboard. I will say the day and night cycle for the game is nothing truly groundbreaking, but it still is unique. By day, fishing is fairly easy and the only real threats are any rocks or islands. By night, a different assortment of fish appears, however, the fog begins to roll in and the horrors begin to appear. As you persist within the fog and face more horrors, your sanity, which is represented by the little eye on your clock, opens and begins to become more paranoid and erratic, representing the fall into madness. Being mad doesn't really seem to have any super deadly consequences, but it does seem that the more insane you are, the more frequent and impactful random events can be. From rocks that can appear out of thin air, to islands that disappear as you approach them, to even sea monstrosities that can follow you and damage your hull. And there are even birds that will appear and begin to steal your cargo. The horrors are seemingly endless in Dredge. Alright, so finally we get to talk about inventory Tetris and assembling your rig. There are 5 different types of slots in your ship's inventory, ranging from the basic cargo, which is otherwise empty, which is used to hold your fish, treasure, and any quest-related items. There are your rod spaces, which you can place various rods that allow you to fish in different regions and also boosts your fishing efficiency. There are net spaces, which also double as rod spaces as well, where you can place nets that allow you to passively catch fish as you travel. There are engine spaces, where you place various engines to boost your ship's base speed. And finally, there are light spaces, where you can place an assortment of lights to expel the fog around you, granting you a limited protection against its maddening effects. Overall, I have a love-hate relationship with the inventory system. I actually don't mind playing inventory Tetris. It's actually a part of it that I do like. What I don't like is how engines, lights, rods, and nets take up space within your cargo. Especially when you begin upgrading your hull and upgrading how many spaces of the aforementioned specialty spaces that you get, your rods and nets and lights and engines can actually begin to displace a little bit too much space in your cargo hold for me personally, and it ended up creating these weird holes that I'm really just not a fan of. It also kind of leads into my other qualm with the inventory system, is the inability to use a large variety of the different gear that you get at the same time. Since the rod spaces are completely limited, you can really only use like a rod, a net, and a few couple of the engines at the same time. You can't put everything into your engines and be able to zip around the map at crazy breakneck speeds. You also can't use every single type of rod at the same time without sacrificing some efficiency. To me, I feel like with the final upgrades, I should be able to use every rod at peak efficiency and also use all the interesting kind of cultish / abyssal things that you get from completing the shrines. I found myself unable to use some of them because I just didn't have the space. I needed to be able to catch various types of fish. But yeah, it's definitely a design choice that I don't fully agree with, but I don't think it ruins the game in any sense. Alright, so let's begin talking about the 5 different regions in Dredge's world. First off, the Marrows. The Marrows are pretty simplistic. The area between Greater and Little Marrow has a variety of fish at both day and night, and the region does have some pretty interesting threats when you first begin the game. It's definitely by far the most relaxed region within the game, but it does well enough to introduce you to the game, the world, and the horrors that are awaiting you. Next up, let's talk the Gale Cliffs. The Gale Cliffs are the second area you are required to visit, and the first place you actually get a pretty significant upgrade: explosives. This actually unlocks a lot of smaller paths and is really a good way to get pieces of refined metal, which is a resource that is required to upgrade the main hull. Here, the game forces you to confront and then subsequently dodge and avoid a massive eel-like abomination. It's really one of the first large creatures you encounter in Dredge. Third on the list is Stellar Basin. I actually ended up fully upgrading my boat before hitting up the basin. I also worked on my encyclopedia during this time since I knew I was going to be 100%ing the game anyways. Being way over-equipped for the region did make it feel a little bit underwhelming, but looking at it from the lens of not having a fully upgraded ship, the giant beast at the bottom of the basin still made my jaw drop and literally say out loud while I was playing, "Damn, that's a big boy." To me, the creature is some form of gargantuan squid. It kind of hints at this, that it's squid-like at least. While it's not really important to the story as a collective whole, it was definitely fun to mess around with it, and it was very unique to the area, since I couldn't really fish within the basin at day or night until the creature was distracted. Second to last, we have the Twisted Strand. The Strand was a pretty fun area in my opinion. I really liked that the threat in the region was so different compared to the rest. The weird mind-bending / consuming eels that constantly slowed your boat, combined with the roots that would constantly block off exit paths, was definitely interesting and really annoying to actually have to deal with. I didn't spend too much time here since there wasn't a whole lot of creatures I actually was required to capture. The encyclopedia seems to shrink down as you progress through the regions, and the story was pretty fast. It only took me maybe about 15 minutes total to breeze through the Strand, but it was still enjoyable and probably my favorite location outside of the basin. And finally, we have the Devil's Spine. The Devil's Spine was built to be the world of Dredge's most dangerous area, and honestly, I was pretty underwhelmed. I thought this area was going to have some sort of unique mechanic for dealing with the volcanic region that it is. There is lava and magma underneath the water that is visible, and I thought it was going to be unique and have to be dealt with in an interesting way, and there really wasn't. And on top of that, the threats were really not apparent. The little like piranha-esque horrors that could stall your boat until the massive one arrived was really easily avoidable. And if I ever really needed to get close to them, I could just use the banish spell. I really felt the most bored within this region. I felt it was very uninspired in the uniqueness, while the design was peak. I love the idea of a volcanic region. I'm all for that, but the execution just wasn't there for me. And I honestly just sped through it, and there's nothing really notable about it for me. But overall, I do really think that each region is unique and brings a menagerie of threats to the table when exploring in Dredge. They each hold their own special secrets and hints towards the greater story, and they do assist in furthering the story of Dredge. Once again, the entire purpose behind the Completionist Files is to review games after playing them through 100% completion, talking about whether it is better or worse to 100% the game, and if just playing the base game is more beneficial to the experience. And that's exactly what I did with Dredge. I played it to 100% completion. Now, on Steam, I actually only have 37 achievements for the game because the DLCs add a lot more achievements and actually kind of block me from getting 3 since the base game has 40. Those 3 are visiting every dock, getting every fish shrine, and getting the achievement for getting all other achievements. Since the DLCs add more docks and another fish shrine, I just can't get them. However, in the base game of Dredge, which I own, I have done everything. This includes catching every fish alongside all its aberrations, completing all the quests, which I actually didn't fail any of them, and also doing all the optional and timed pursuits alongside them. I completed every fish shrine and obtained the unique equipment assorted with them, and I researched, purchased, and built every single engine, net, rod, light, and subsequent ship upgrade. And then finally, I managed to find every note and message in a bottle. To be fair, these achievements were actually fairly easy to get. The only ones I managed to get hung up on were some of the optional and actually all of the timed objectives. I didn't actually discover the creatures or humanoid-esque people that were like colored, that wore the colored cloth, sorry, until I looked up what my missing pursuits were. The only other big hiccup in the game was grinding out the same fish over and over again to find its aberrations, especially when I just could not get lucky enough to even find a fishing spot for that fish for multiple days. So I'm calling this section the best moments, but I mean it in a way of the best of the best and the best of the worst. To be completely honest, I almost loved everything about this game. And I was really only frustrated with the RNG of not getting the aberrations I needed, but otherwise this game is fantastic. However, my by far best moments have got to be the following. It was getting smacked by the Kraken-like tentacle within the Gale Cliffs for the first time. The first few times sailing at night and truly feeling the horror when your ship is so dimly lit, it's so slow, and you're just so vulnerable to the horrors of the deep. The first time I ever saw and then was chased by the giant angler, that was terrifying. The first time I laid eyes on the Leviathan within the Stellar Basin. And then finally, I kind of didn't realize you're supposed to discover this as a secret, but the reveal that the Collector is you, which is either an alter ego of you or you're an alter ego of the Collector, it's not really explained, but that you and the Collector are the same person. Yeah, it was really cool in my opinion, and I wasn't expecting it. Like I said, I'm a professional gamer who has a completely professional opinion that you should follow and never deviate from. And overall, the actual 100%ing of this game was pretty trivial. most of it can be done by just completing the game. Filling out the encyclopedia is probably one of the only things alongside the shrines and optional pursuits that can be missed alongside doing the main story. If I were to rate it on a scale of 1 to 5, Dredge I'd put at a solid 1 out of 5 for the difficulty to 100%. While the game approximately took me 17 hours to complete, I say approximately because at least a couple of the hours spent was when I just had the game open, I forgot to hit record, and I kind of just went off to eat or cook, both really, or do some house chores and stuff like that. Realistically, if I actually tried to complete the game quickly, maybe even speedrun it, I don't think it would take me any longer than 5 to 10 hours, somewhere within that ballpark. But honestly, this game is incredible. It doesn't have beautiful graphics, it doesn't have a super impressive storyline, but the gameplay is simple, and it's fun. That's all this game needs. It can build the atmosphere of chilling and intensity, and it does it well. It doesn't need, the most realistic graphics in the world. It doesn't need the most amazing soundtrack, which, I mean, the music itself is wonderful. And I actually got the game on Humble Bundle, but I would definitely buy this game at base price. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to be buying the DLC soon, so I can 100% that as well. I would highly recommend this game if you like indie games or horror games, or both indie horror games, or you just want something to play to kill some time. But that's it. That is 2 games that I've now 100%ed. Don't forget to subscribe to follow along and see what I will be 100%ing next. Some games I even plan to stream to keep people on their toes. Give the video a like to tell me that this was actually enjoyable to watch. It doesn't really do anything for you, but it lets me know and helps me improve on my video quality. Give me a comment to see, what game you would like me to 100% next. I do take suggestions, and I am excited to 100% games. That's been me. I'm Devoted221. This has been the Completionist Files, covering the game Dredge. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Peace!